Good morning. I'm Steve Rosansky, President of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to our monthly Wake Up Newport meeting. We've got a great program for you this morning. We've got a great speaker. Before we launch into that, I do want to introduce a few of the dignitaries that are here with us, the VIP type people. And we've got a number of them, actually. So I'll start off with one of our council members, Scott Piotter's here this morning, way in the back, the tallest man in the room, and that's hard to do when John Moorlach's here. Scott Piotter. Former Mayor Rush Hill is with us this morning. Rush, over there. We have Planning Commissioner Tim Brown with us this morning. Tim. A couple of Harbor Commissioners, Paul Blank and Dave Gerling, are here with us this morning. And a Planning Commissioner, Corey Kramer. Sorry, they're not in order here of the pecking order. Pierce Swan with the Irvine Ranch Water District. He's a director over there. We also have, can't even read my notes. Oh, we have a special group with us this morning. We have the Future Business Leaders of America group from Corona Del Mar High School, the FBLA. Their principal from the Corona Del Mar High School, Kathy Blank, has joined us. Or not, I'm sorry, Kathy Scott. Paul Blank, Kathy Scott. And Mr. Rojas, their professor or teacher. How do you go, professor? Advisor, okay, their advisor. And we also have Costa Mesa City Council candidate, Lee Ramos, is with us this morning. Lee, over there. We have a far reach here. We reach right into Costa Mesa, and we draw Lee into our meeting. And so before we get going with our speaker, I do want to introduce our food sponsor this morning. He's with the UPS store on 17th Street. I think he'll give you the address. But Patrick Juarez, why don't you come up, Patrick, and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business. He arranged for the French toast catering this morning. It was quite delicious. I had some. Thanks. There you go, Patrick.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going today? It's great to be here. I really want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to sponsor the event today, and our partners, Bountiful Events, that provided the catering. I hear it's delicious. I'm going to try it as soon as I'm done speaking here. So we are the newest UPS store location in Newport Beach. We opened on August 1st in the Westcliff Plaza at 17th and Irvine. Those of you familiar with the plaza, formerly we used to be Newport Beach Business Center, and we've since rebranded back to the UPS store. It used to be one of our mailboxes, etc. locations, so we're bringing her back into the family. And really looking forward to support the Newport Beach and surrounding area business community and customers. A major emphasis on our brand is that we're focused on small business solutions, from our print services to our notary, our live scan fingerprinting, and mailbox service, as well as the pack and ship side of our business, which is pretty much synonymous with our name. So for the holiday season, we've also partnered with Toys for Tots Literacy, on the literacy side, rather, the books and reading side of their campaign. So we are collecting monetary donations for that as part of our peak season initiatives, as well as providing the pack and ship services that are, of course, very heavily utilized during this time of year. So again, we look forward to seeing all of you at our store and taking advantage of the offers that we'll have available to Chamber members throughout the year. For the holiday season, we are extending 25% off packaging services and 20% off holiday print services. So if you haven't got your greeting cards printed yet, or maybe thinking of doing a personalized color calendar as a gift idea, we have that capability along with all the other services. As well as live scan fingerprinting too. We've actually added that as one of the new services as the UPS store from our former business entity. So again, thank you again. I hope everybody enjoyed the breakfast and the snacks, and we'll look forward to seeing you this season. Bye.
Thank you, Patrick. He's going to be a busy guy wrapping gifts for the next 30 days probably. One other VIP I forgot, our Fire Chief, Scott Poster, is with us as well. So let's get started. We'll launch right into our program. This morning we have State Senator John Moorlach with us. I'm not going to get into a long bio. John's been around a long time. Everybody knows him. Most recently he was our supervisor for the area, and he's infamous or famous, whatever you want to call it, for a number of things, but for predicting the Orange County bankruptcy. So with that short introduction, you don't need to hide. You're famous, not infamous, is my good friend John Moorlach.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks for asking me to come, and it's an honor to be back here with the Newport Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to talk real quickly, but because we have future leaders, just want to give you a little background. I did graduate from high school. And in fact, I went to a much better high school than you're attending. No. Actually, I went to Western High School in Anaheim, which is now really well known because of another person that graduated from Western. But it was funny, my middle brother, I have two brothers, I'm the oldest. My middle brother was substitute teaching at Western one day, and he walked in, and the secretary said, you know, your brother is the second most famous person that's graduated from our high school. He said, so the first is a little kid that my sister wanted to babysit, and his name is Tiger Woods. And my sister would babysit the little girl across the street, and I always said, why can't I babysit that cute little kid? So that's the high school I went to. And then I went to Long Beach State and graduated from there and was just recognized last year, 2014, as Alumni of the Year. So I was on the campus yesterday. There's 30,000 kids, and to be selected, I mean, that's statistically impossible to just be selected out of all those people to be honored. So I was really blessed by that. When I spoke at the graduation, I told the graduates that the governor that signed my diploma would be signing theirs. That's also statistically impossible. So that's just a little background, and Steve's kind of giving you the rest. But we have 40 senators in California, 80 assembly members. I serve on the Judiciary Committee. I'm the vice chair, although I am not an attorney. I'm a CPA and a certified financial planner. So I don't know if this is like a real honor or if it's punishment to be on this committee, but it's a real challenge. I serve on Governance and Finance Committee, which has been a lot of fun. The chairman is Senator Bob Hertzberg out of Los Angeles, and he was the leader of the assembly, and he's bright and quick, and he and I have a lot of fun debating in committee. I serve on Budget Committee, which is a lot of fun. Sub 1 means that there are several budget committees, but Subcommittee 1 oversees the education budget of the state. So I get to learn about the CSUs and the UCs and Hastings Law School. I'm getting a big education. And because the governor wants a special session to deal with managed care organizations, I also sit on the Public Health and Developmental Services Committee. Developmental Services hit the news yesterday when they did a lockdown of Fairview Developmental Center here on Harbor Boulevard, which is here in Costa Mesa. The state wants to shut that facility down, and so that'll be part of our discussion. We kind of put a team together. I was really blessed with an incredible staff, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but we decided we got to focus on a few things, and we want to evaluate the state's fiscal health, which I want to kind of talk about first to tell you what I'm dealing with. We want to focus on fixing California's finances and governance, and that's sort of been my story. I was a partner in a firm here in Costa Mesa and had a great time, all kinds of clients around the area. And then I tried to warn about the bankruptcy, and then had a chance to turn around the treasurer's office and help the county get out of bankruptcy, and then started screaming 15 years ago that pension plan enhancements weren't going to work, and now it's a big problem all over the nation. And so we're trying to figure out how do we improve and fix government. And then we want to provide transparency and accountability. And it's really funny, we live in a state where a lot of things just are not disclosed, and I want to give you some more stories on that. But the goal is to have a business-friendly, solvent, and prosperous state in which families can thrive. I've been amazed since becoming a state senator how often I'm out in public and how often someone will pull me aside and whisper in my ear, "We're thinking about moving to another state because we are just so tired of what we're putting up with here in California." And so I get the feeling that our state's major export is people. You know, our residents are moving elsewhere, and Texas is already out producing. I could show you a litany of slides of how we're not performing well as a state anymore. But we just want to try and see what we can do to make this place business friendly. Because I gave you too many nightmare stories of people that are building facilities, not in California, but in Arizona and Utah and Nevada and Texas especially. So I want to go over the California budget a little bit so I can scare the kids in the room. But this is one bill we are required to vote on. It's in the Constitution. You have to pass a budget every year. And the drill used to be that it needed 2/3 vote, and there were more than 1/3 Republicans, so they would hold it up, and sometimes you wouldn't balance the budget until October. You know, it just was one of these drills, and everyone would have to cancel family vacations. It was really an awkward thing. And so they passed Proposition 25, which says you have to balance that budget by the end of June, or you get no pay as a legislator. And so we get it balanced by June 20. You know, this is kind of a funny thing. But we don't get it really done properly. What happens is the governor says, why don't we pass this budget, and then we need to do some other stuff, so let's have special session, which we can then introduce new legislation and try and raise taxes or whatever the case may be. So now a little summary of our health. Let's see if we get, we approved this year the largest budget ever that the state has ever seen. $265 billion, which from last year, you know, is still quite a jump. Our general fund grew by $7 billion. The rest is federal funds. And so the question is this sustainable? You know, we've gone through the Great Recession, but you wouldn't know that we did by looking at what kind of spending that the state is doing. And it's like a rocket ship. And the black line through the middle is, you know, what would it be if you just grew by the rate of inflation and by the growth of population? So we are way beyond some of our normal statistical trends. So it's going to be interesting that even at this point, you know, more than a quarter trillion budget, that we're looking to raise more taxes out of you, which is just sort of an incredible paradigm. So the budget that was proposed by the state legislature was a lot larger, higher, bigger number than what the governor wanted. And so we're not allowed to have props on the floor of the Senate. And I decided to try something, so I said, I just wanted you to know that I have a gift for the governor, and I whip out these pencils. And so we joke about how the governor has the blue line opportunity. So I said I wanted to give the governor these blue pencils. It wasn't too many minutes after that the state president of the Senate, Kevin DeLeon, came up to me. And he says, you know, we're not supposed to use props, but man, was that a smart idea. I wish I had have thought of that. And then he called me a couple names and went back to his seat. So California's fiscal health is poor. We have the nation's highest unfunded pension obligations. This is a very conservative number. CalPERS for the state is probably $105 billion. CalSTRS is at least $65 billion. We have the highest unfunded retiree medical, $72 billion. Of course, we're the largest state, right? So it's like we should have the largest numbers, but there are a lot of states that, when you compare, I mean, you got Wisconsin has no unfunded liabilities for pensions. So we're a state that hasn't even really started to even fund our retiree medical. We have the nation's highest deferred infrastructure maintenance. We have the highest gas tax, but we have the worst roads. It's just crazy. So what's really disheartening, and what I talked about last time, is that our unrestricted net deficit is $117 billion. It should be zero or higher. Otherwise, anything below zero, you're a bankruptcy candidate. But $117 billion is just a staggering number. And that's for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. We now have Government Accounting Standards Board's requirements that come with this reporting year, June 2015. We have to now report our unfunded liabilities for the pensions. So I'm expecting that our balance sheet will be like $250 billion upside down when you see your financial statements. Now, we're in December. It's hard for accountants to get all these financial statements done for June 30, you know, by December. I don't know, is Newport Beach, have you received, Scott Piotr, have you received your financial statements from the auditors yet? So it's usually about December, but you're going to start seeing article after article the next few weeks of cities where they got their audited financial statements and the numbers are just dismal. For some crazy reason, publicly traded corporations have to report pension liabilities on their balance sheets, and you'll know about it when you're buying their stock. Everything's disclosed. But in the government industry, you didn't have to. So you could hide things and you could play games with pensions, and that's what happened. And that's why this topic is so big around the country. So if you take the unrestricted net deficit and you divide it by the population to get it per capita, how do we compare to other states? And we have to thank New Jersey that we're not in last place. At least they've got a Republican governor who's trying to change things, and so you can see why there are a lot of clips of him arguing publicly with public employee union members and teachers, and he's kind of saying, hey, look, either we fix this or we become a real awkward statistic. Connecticut is also in pretty dire straits. Illinois has already told their lottery winners that they have to wait for their payments because of the cash flow crunch that they're enjoying. I just drove through Illinois last month. I went from Milwaukee to Memphis. My grandkids live in Milwaukee, and my youngest brother, just moved to the Memphis area. And I just thought, I want to see Illinois. How can you tax these people anymore? And it's all farmland. You got Chicago, and then the rest is farmland. And farmers are they're having a bad year. So how do you tax these people more to pay for ever-increasing costs? Massachusetts, but California is in 46th place. We're in the bottom 10 percentile. Isn't that great? I'm just so proud of us. To show you how bad this number of 3,000, if every man, woman, and child in California paid $3,000, we would get to zero. I mean, we're talking 31 million people chipping in $3,000 each. But the County of Orange filed for bankruptcy, and it was the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, and it held that record for 17 years. We were bumped by Jefferson County. Jefferson County's unrestricted net deficit per capita was only $1,600 negative. So we're double bankruptcy candidate, just to tell you how big this is. So Kentucky, New York, and so just to give you a little perspective, from the last 7 years, this has been the growth areas in our budget. And the area that the state has paid the least attention to is on the far right, and that's transportation. So the state has intentionally not done anything with fixing our roads. So I find it very fascinating that they come to us now saying, boy, you guys got to raise your taxes to fix the roads. And I'm saying to them, where were you? If it was important, where were you all these years? So you look at Caltrans's budget, the average spending, and this is just for a period of 5 to 6 years, but I can go back a dozen years, and the trend is the same. It's about 10 to 10.5 billion that the state has been spending every year on Caltrans. It has not made fixing roads a priority. But you look at what's been happening with the gas tax, from a little under $7 billion a year to over $9.5 billion, just $2.5 billion. That money has been transferred somewhere else. The skin in the game that the state has supposed to be putting into roads went somewhere else. And I will tell you with a straight face, it went into the pension funds of the state, because that's where the growth is, and it isn't broken out by any statistics that we have. So I'm not here to bash employees. I'm just here to say that defined benefit pension plans can be really nasty animals. Peter Drucker, over 50 years ago, said, don't do this. One of the best management consultants said, don't do this unless you plan on having your company last forever. And about the only forever we have is government, right? And so that's where it is, and it's been abused a little bit. And I'm not here to pick on employees. I'm just saying the math is not pretty. And we have had too many businesses and industry that shut down, and the pensioners get a little postcard that says you're going to get 40% of what you expected because that's all we got, right? Ask an airline pilot, or ask from Eastern, or so we've got to figure out how to make this work. But this is what's happening. And I'm up there, and I got to fight for Orange County because we only get 6.5 cents on the dollar in Orange County of property taxes. San Francisco city-state gets 65 cents. I mean, we are at the bottom, and they're at the top. And so we were really beat up when I was supervisor over our vehicle license fee adjustment account. I won't go into the details, but every county has been beat up over AB 109, public safety realignment. When the governor was told to reduce the prison population, he gave them to us. So if you're wondering why your personal property crimes are up, and the police are here, the representatives are here. We've got a real issue of having people out on probation and parole that actually have to somehow figure out how to earn an income. And we've also got Prop 47, which has made a big impact, and we're still having a public debate on how that's affecting us. And then we've had healthcare realignment, where the state has shifted a lot of funds down to the counties. It's been very difficult in county land, so we got to fight for that. So how do we dig out? And all I keep hearing is we need to raise tax rates. We need to, I'm kind of going, really? How do you do that when we have the highest income tax rate already? We have the highest sales tax rates, and we have the highest gas tax if you throw in cap and trade. I mean, we're at the top. It's like, how do you keep throwing it on there? And Governor Brown and I, Jerry and I, are actually on a first-name basis, and we've had some incredible debates, but he's had people contribute to his campaign, so he thinks there's still money out there and you guys can be taxed more. I mean, he said it to my face. But the weather here is fantastic. So, trying to have a little fun. These are the proposals that we hope to pursue in 2016. We want to deal with what's called Proposition 98 spillover. So we've got teachers in the room and principals. I get to pick on you a little bit. I'll give you a little education on how this works. I want to deal with pension reforms, coin reforms, I'll explain that in a second, regulatory reforms, which is killing our businesses, Caltrans reforms, of course, and then mental health, ER, emergency room reforms. We don't know what we saw yesterday. I don't know if it was mental illness. I don't know. I'm just really grieving. They're county employees of another county, a neighboring county. And I've got a lot of friends in San Bernardino County, so I'm pretty shook up about what happened. But we don't have all the answers. Everything is so premature. But it was a murder in a county, Nevada County, that started a lot of mental health reforms as well. For someone who had schizophrenia and came in and killed Laura Wilcox, and I'll get into that in a second. So Prop 98 says of all the taxes we collect in the state, 40% goes to education and 60% goes to the rest. It was something we did in 1988. Teachers are pretty powerful. California Teachers Association said, you got to cut out from our budget 40% just to take care of K through 12, the community colleges, and then the CSU and the UC system. So Kate, if there's anything wrong, you just let me know. But this is because Kate is here with UCI, and her boss, Chancellor Gilman, it calls me personally and it tells me how to vote on the the joys of being on Sub 1. You get the Howard Gilman calls, and my college president comes visits. It's great. But what's been happening is there's a spillover. There are a lot of things in the general budget, the 60% that are being paid for schools. So if 40% goes to education, we're spending $83 billion now at the state level, and that's about $14,000 per student. So appreciate your education, because we're chipping in a whole lot. So I want you to stay in the state. I want you to pay taxes. I want you to make big incomes, buy big houses. That's all I'm saying. But we've got a bond measure that's going on the ballot for November, and it's going to generate massive payments on those bonds, and they have to come out of the 60% portion. And so I got up on the floor, and I said, why? Because it was supposed to be voted on by the legislature first. If you can get a 2/3 vote, then it puts it on the ballot without having to raise signatures. And I said, why would you guys, liberals, who spend a lot of money out of the 60% for a lot of incredible programs, why would you take on the debt of the schools with your funds? Because that's going to squeeze out what you want to do. And by the way, pension costs are going up. That will squeeze out. And so why would you do that? And in fact, we're paying for a lot of teacher pension contributions out of the 60%. And they're all looking at me like, yeah, why would we do that? And even my Senate staff, the Republican Senate caucus staff, they're looking at me like, well, why don't we talk about this before you bring that kind of stuff up? And so I said, well, I'm just asking questions. I'm new here, but it seems to me you have a real problem. So we're going to try to do some legislation that would try to shift over some of this into the 40% side, because what's really interesting, you saw that the budgets go up. With Prop 98, if you have a good year, that locks in the 40% for the next year. It doesn't fluctuate with it. The high becomes the new low. So it's going to be real interesting in a few years how Prop 98 affects the state. So we're at least bringing it up. We kind of caught everybody by surprise, but it's like, hey, you guys, this is, again, a math issue. Let's try and fix it. Otherwise, this thing's going to go 50-50, and Governor Brown and the rest are not going to have the money to do whatever they want to do. So we have unfunded liabilities. We have CalPERS, CalSTRS. We have the UC pension system, the retiree medical. And this is an old cartoon when Vallejo filed for Chapter 9. Stockton has filed. I mean, now we've got the city of San Bernardino, ironically, yesterday in the news. We've got now Detroit, which is now the #1 bankruptcy. It's knocked Orange County into 3rd place. And I'm not happy about that. I kind of like being #1. But you can kind of see that this cartoonist is sort of getting the drill that we've got to start doing something. So just last week, maybe earlier this week, the California State Auditor came out and said, we're going to do an analysis of high-risk local governments. And they've already picked on 6 cities. Fortunately, none of them in Orange County. But close. Hemet isn't too far from us. Monrovia is not too far from us. But they're already starting to look at cities seriously. And they've got a whole process of what they do. So pension reform, we got to give options to allow cities and others to do what the private sector is doing, and that is provide defined contribution systems. We know this is anathema to the public employee unions, and when we tried to prioritize what bills we were going to do, we knew that there would be some in the category that we called WBK, will be killed. They're just going to, this is not going to get any air, but this has to be done for the state to survive. We need to require government pensions to play by the same rules as the private sector, and we need to allow voter approval of final deals. And we did this in Orange County with Measure G. You can negotiate any pension benefit increases you want, but you have to get this approved by the voters before it is finalized and you sign the contract with the bargaining unit. This was done in the county of San Francisco in their charter. It's been there for 100 years. So I stole it from a very conservative county. We have civic openness in negotiations, a little concept that was started right here in Costa Mesa next door. Steve Minzinger put it together, and it was just, hey, why don't we just have an ordinance that kind of says, here's how we negotiate, that every proposal, counter-proposal, and supposal is made public during the negotiating process. I've been negotiating public employee bargaining unit contracts now for 8 years, and it is amazing what comes in the door first. You never see. So if they can go ask all this, and we're here, they're thinking, well, maybe we can get somewhere in between. If that were made public, you'd kind of go, unions, are you serious? I mean, are you really serious? It would make the discussion a little more realistic. It should be negotiated by an independent party. You shouldn't have management negotiating for yourself because management benefits for the improvements and enhancements, and so that needs to be a change. You need to have someone at least tell you realistically what it's going to cost. The last bargaining unit agreement I voted against. I lost 3-2, but I voted against it because of a financial component that had not been analyzed, which will come back to bite the butt of the county of Orange in a few years. But last year's grand jury figured it out and did a nice report on the retiree medical that was agreed to with the Association of Deputy Sheriffs. But it would have been nice to have had a financial analysis say, hey, this is how it's going to impact you. When people, all these wonderful elected officials voted for pension enhancements, no one said to them, this is going to be a liability on your balance sheet, because it wasn't. So they didn't have any sense of a perspective of what kind of cost it would have. So we've got to start being realistic about that. I'll go back to this real quick. We adopted COIN at the county last year. It was one of the last things I did as supervisor. The unions didn't like it at all. They went to Sacramento. They got Senator Mendoza to write a bill, Senate Bill 331, which said that if any city or county adopts COIN, then they have to adopt a whole rigid set of rules in dealing with their request for proposals for any kind of contract. We called it the poison pill. It barely passed both houses, and regretfully, it was signed by the governor. So we're coming back with a coin proposal statewide. It was really funny because just 4 months ago, the LA Times did an editorial saying, City of LA needs to adopt coin. I mean, we got to get this going. So even a publication like the Times is supportive of this idea. But what's so funny is Myers-Milius-Brown, which is the code that we operate under when you negotiate, actually allows for most of this. This is nothing dramatic. And in fact, the school districts have some great rules for negotiating. And we're actually going to steal some of their laws and transfer it over. And it's just going to be fun to see if this falls in the WBK category or if we can kind of embarrass them to say, hey, why should there be a difference between even schools and regular municipalities? Regulatory reform, just really find it really interesting that we have departments that are sort of autonomous and they issue regulations. And so we're saying they should be constitutional, they should be explicitly authorized and controlled by statute. They should not create new law. They should consider the separation of power. We need to do a reality check. Individual agencies, departments are less likely to scrutinize their regulations objectively. They just kind of issue them. I mean, like I say 4 initials and a lot of people have moaned and groaned. AQMD. I mean, you guys have gone through this fire pit thing. It's just amazing by a board that you have no control over. So we want to adopt what's called regulations from the executive in need of scrutiny. Kind of called it the REINS Act, and actually we stole this from a federal congressional act that's going on right now. But legislature has say on final regulations. You want to do a regulation, great, but you better have us vote on it. Now I think this is going to be really good because what's really fun about elected officials is they really love power, And it's like, oh, that's right, we had better vote on it. And then they make them accountable, then they can go back to their constituents and explain why they voted for something that's really draconian. We need to verify regulations do not negatively impact the state's economy. And if it does, we need to scream, hey, this new rule will hurt you. So we want to do that. Now this year, the Caltrans was sort of a strange gift because I decided if we're going to try and force a tax on the residents of California, $65 per car, 12 cents per gallon, what's Caltrans doing and what can we do to improve Caltrans? How does it compare when you look at metrics that are publicly available on the internet? How does Caltrans stand up? We're the only state that I found this when I was traveling that we call ourselves Caltrans. Everybody else is DOT, Department of Transportation. So you're going to be TDOT if you're Tennessee, or it's just kind of interesting. But we're Caltrans, and so we found out that they don't contract out very much. Now, Orange County Transportation Authority outsources their architect and engineering 50%. Most states, about 50%. We've got some exceptional states. New York is already over 60, Oregon is 70, Florida is 78, Arizona is 80, and California is 10%. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a little frustrated by this 6-7 years ago, tried to do a bill, and he wanted to require Caltrans to contract an amazing amount. He wanted them to go to 11%. And he lost that bill. So special session, I do a bill. Caltrans should outsource next year 15%, and then the next year 20%, and then in 8 years you should be up to 50%, like everybody else. Now management didn't come to my committee meeting and protest. It was the head of the union, the professional engineers for California government showed up, and in committee he's giving all kinds of statistics and how it's going to cost just as much if you go outside as inside. And I'm going, no, because when you have a downturn, I can terminate contracts with outside firms. I can't seem to terminate employees around here. So you would save a whole bunch of money if you outsource, and obviously so many in the rest of the nation are doing that. So we want to bring that bill back. So we also want to address the current management structure. Caltrans is just rife with amazing stories. Last May in 2014, the State Legislative Analyst's Office came out and provided a very fascinating statistic. Excuse me. They found out that of the 20,000 employees at Caltrans, 10,000 are architects and engineers, 10,000 do all the other stuff. Of the architects and engineers, they were overstaffed, not by 35, not by 350, but by 3,500 employees. It's just staggering. And you take that number and you look at the population of Caltrans, in total, 54% of them are already at retirement age. So if we say we want to downsize the department, we're not doing anything dramatic here. These people will attrition out naturally, so there won't be one layoff. But we pay them, on average, these 3,500 people, we pay them an average of $143,000 a year, which is salary, pension, medical, dental. And when you do the math for the high schoolers, that's $500 million that we're paying, that your folks are paying every year for people to do nothing. So if you're looking for a career, if I could do some counseling, you know, architect, engineer, sorry, Rush, I'm just having a little. But it's just amazing. So I get a call from, my staff comes to me on the floor. ABC, Channel 10, Sacramento's coming, they want to talk to you. I said, what about? He says, well, the state auditor just came out with another report. What's that? Well, they had an engineer at Caltrans that golfed 55 days out of the last 18 months. And in the report, it said, I'll golf as often as I can. So I think the movie is it Office Space? You kids can help me out with it. You know, and so they don't know who the boss is, you know, so this guy just finally ends up in the basement. Well, this guy, this engineer, he had two supervisors. One says, are you watching him? No, I thought you were watching him. But they were signing off on his time reports all the same, and he had 55 days of golf. So the camera comes on. How do you feel as a senator that they are golfing 55 days out of the year? And I said something like, well, what else is there for them to do? Because there's 3,500 of these guys that have nothing to do, and they were probably, reading papers. So why not golf? That went pretty viral. But Caltrans spends 3 times the national average per mile on repairing our roads. And I don't know, what month is this? This is December. We don't have snow on the ground, right? We got how many states that have snow and they're going to deal with salt and all kinds of other conditions, and they're out spending a lot less than we are. So can you say Bay Bridge? You wonder where all the money's going? It's $6.4 billion to repair a bridge, and it's already rated as deficient and suffering from water damage. $6.4 billion. We built the Golden Gate Bridge, I think, for $35 million when Rush was a kid. Sorry. We could have tunneled under the bay, and Bart's already got trains going underneath the San Francisco Bay. We could have tunneled for less than that and gotten everybody across. It's just crazy what's going on. And I just go, where's the outrage? Where is everybody going? What's going on? So we want to reform Caltrans. So tone deaf. I had to deal with Caltrans here as a director of OCTA. We're going to spend $1.3 billion to widen the 405, widen up 17 bridges so we can add 4 lanes. Now, we widened the Garden Grove Freeway, and that was really easy. The next time you drive, you can go out on a date with, drive the Garden Grove Freeway, the 22, and see how many bridges you go under. You really don't. You go over every street, all the main streets go under the Garden Grove. So it was really easy to widen that thing. But if you're going to widen the 405, you got to take down 17 bridges and move all the pylons so you can proceed under. That's going to be $1.3 billion, and Caltrans says, great, once you build those bridges and once you get those 4 lanes in, we'll take them and we'll have toll lanes. We're going, how tone deaf are you guys? The Friday that this report came out that we had a golfer engineer, that Monday, the head of Caltrans, Malcolm Dougherty, was going to be at Dove Canyon in Orange County for a golf tournament, for a fundraiser. And we said, well, isn't that interesting, that he's taking a Monday. It's not a Saturday golf tournament, not a Sunday. It's a Monday golf tournament. And Caltrans went ballistic. They're getting calls from John and Ken and all kinds. And they contacted us, and we want the senator to retract the statement because Malcolm Dougherty is taking a vacation day for this to raise money for this organization. And we said, fine, show us his time reports for the last 2 years, and if he took vacation days, we'll retract. Never called us back. So it's been real fun, my first year in Sacramento. So if you see my body in a flood control channel, you'll know That's, so we need to contract out more. We need to address the current management, and we need better data and accountability. What was really, you just said till 9:30. We need better data. It's just amazing when the state legislative analyst's office and the state auditor's office tell you that Caltrans is unauditable. I mean, it's like, wait a second, I'm a CPA, give me the general ledger and let me have some fun. So it's just crazy. They need better data, better accountability. In 2011, the state auditor found out that 62% of Caltrans projects were over budget. That's a third, close. We also need to improve environmental review processes. As governments, have to pay for CEQA and NEPA. I won't go into all the details, but it's just incredible what we have to go through, which adds so much in cost. But we can do so much at Caltrans without having to raise taxes to get to our roads. Mental health, Prop 63 was approved about 10 years ago, and it was called Laura's Law. Laura Wilcox was killed, similar to what we saw yesterday in San Bernardino County. She was in the Social Services Agency office, and a young man with schizophrenia shot and killed her. And so they formed a law called Laura's Law, and because it was so expensive to implement, which it's called assisted outpatient treatment, where you can try and get people that have mental issues, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, you can get them medicated properly, then they can hopefully carry on normal lives. But because it's assisted outpatient, not mandatory, Prop 63 didn't cover it. So one of the things I did 2 years ago was work with Senator Steinberg to do a bill to allow for Prop 63 to fund for Laura's Law. And Daryl, good man on the other side of the aisle, has a brother here in Orange County who's a rabbi in Irvine. And I bumped into him on a plane coming out of John Wayne, and he says to me right in front of everybody, if I get 585 passed and I get you the approval to use 63 for Laura's Law, will you adopt it? And I said, yes, I will, guaranteed. And Orange County was the second. It took 12 years since the first. But since we had a funding source, now we've been followed by just about all the other major counties, LA, San Francisco, et cetera. So that was a real triumph. But one of the biggest problems we have in our emergency room, say like at Hoag or at Chalk or even Chalk, but St. Joseph's, is mentally ill people come in and they don't sit there for an hour or two. They sit there for 24 hours sometimes because you can't find beds and places to put them. Chalk is trying to build a ward for mentally ill minors. I mean, some of this stuff is starting to show up usually around 21, 22, but it's coming up earlier. So we're trying to say, okay, let's see if we can spin off some appropriate wording so that we could use some of Prop 63 funding to take care of our people in these emergency rooms. So that's it. I've got a team that's just phenomenal. Since I'm running out of time, I won't go into all the details, but a lot of them you may know from other people. But just to close, the observations I'm getting now that I've been up in Sacramento, and it's kind of killed me, but when one lobbyist turned to his client, a billionaire, and he says, Senator Moorlach reads the bills. And I just thought, what in the world? What are my buddies doing? The other thing that I keep hearing is, you ask great questions. We're actually watching committee meetings again because I could give you all kinds of fun stories. You've hired an amazing staff of a lot of people up there. I was chewed out, not really directly, but indirectly. I hired Lance Christensen. I recruited him away from the Reason Foundation. He's a national expert on pension reform. And they kind of said, we've been trying to recruit that guy for years. How did, you walk in here and you get him like, so that was kind of cool. You look like you're having fun. I had one councilwoman here in the county. She says, I've been watching you on Cal Channel, and you smile when you just dig them and and really go after them. She says, I need to learn how you do that. You are getting along with those on the other side of the aisle. I'm actually having a lot of fun. Bob Hertzberg and I are big huggers. We like to, we just do a lot of fun. I joke with these people. We try to be very cordial. And then I communicate. I do emails, and I appreciate it when people come up to me and say, we really like how you communicate with us. So if you need to be on my email tree, it's like people go, well, no one explains why they vote. And you detail every bill that comes up that makes it to the media. So with that, this is Assemblyman Nazarian, and a publication called Cal Matters caught this photo. And they called me up. And they said, we're noticing that the Republicans and Democrats are getting along a lot better. And part of it could be because of what I said earlier, that we're getting the budget done in time so the Democrats aren't getting so mad at Republicans because they have to cancel vacations and everything else. But I happen to be the only Republican that voted for his bill. This exchange was maybe 5-10 seconds. He came from the assembly, walked over to the Senate chamber, shook my hand, but they caught it, and they did a whole article on how Republicans are getting along with Democrats. And a lot of people thought I would not get along with Democrats. So I do get along with people. Yeah, it looks like we're, you're just one of those, it's kind of a bro thing, just kind of like, not even, but it was just kind of a sweet little moment. But we've had a few of those where, you can actually, work with the people on the other side of the aisle. So I'm having a lot of fun. And if there's time for questions, I'm happy to take them. And I thank you for your attention and your time. No. They got the principal here.
So, here's a common sense question. What if they don't fix it? What's the end result?
What's really interesting is that certain cities and counties can file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy and work through a federal court. And federal judges, they will tell you, welcome to federal court. Here, we can do whatever we want. Bargaining unit contracts, gone. In California, San Bernardino and Stockton, didn't want to touch the pensions because they felt that would make them uneven and uncompetitive for some reason. But in Detroit, the judge cut the pensions of members and made some pretty interesting changes. So you can see that could be a solution. But states are not permitted to file for bankruptcy. So what you'll have is a liquidity crisis. You will not want to be a vendor with the state of California because you're not going to get paid in 30, 60, or 90 days. You're just going to have to wait. And that's what's happening in Illinois. You're just going to be, and so then people, businesses will refuse to work with the state. And you just kind of go through go through this, you just stop. You just, no one wants to work with you. You don't get anything done. So that's why it's so critical that we start getting in front of this thing. It's fun to work with Jerry because at least he gets it a little bit. He says, hey, we got to build reserves. We got to, I voted for his lower budget, but CalPERS is getting it. They've got to raise rates because they're so far behind in funding their pension. So you can kind of see this squeeze coming. So we got to get in front of it, and that's why we've got to educate my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and say, hey, don't let these unions dominate because we're not going after people, we're going after math. We got to fix the math, otherwise we grind to a halt.
Yeah, so why is the gas tax going to the general fund?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, because they can. We have a weight fee that we charge all the trucks in the state. It's $1 billion a year. It doesn't go to the roads.
Right, I know that.
It's one thing after another. So yeah, why does it happen? Because they can. And so they can now tell you that, the roads are really bad shape. They'll show you photos and videos of potholes and it's your problem. You got to fix it. But no, they have been fixing it for the whole history of our state until the last 12, 15 years because of what's been happening with pensions. So when Santa Ana wants to do a pothole tax, it's not for potholes. It's for the pension. Sorry. Oh, no, not Pierre Swan. We're just over.
Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Lisa Mutazi with Southern California Gas Company. Also, I'm part of their CPAC, which is a political organization that actually competes.
So you're like a government employee, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
To mention the statistics that you proposed with Caltrans were so fascinating to me because we no longer offer pensions. Southern California Gas Company at some point, we fully restructured that because we realized that there was a huge burden on the ratepayer. Also, as far as you said, kind of the outsourcing the engineering, I'm project manager for the largest infrastructure pipeline projects in the state. We outsource majority of our engineering
To the offshore or onshore, at the County of Orange, we had a miserable experience with offshore. So I've been through that, don't want to go into the details, in litigation. So I'd like to be onshore. The other part is, how do you get this passed? This is just going to be extremely difficult, but it has to, it's like, I don't want to say I'm a kamikaze or just some, going after windmills, but you've got to get up there and say these things, that we've got to fix these things, and then let them vote them down. And then explain to their constituents in their district why they voted to fix, to oppose fixing things. Now, when it comes to the utilities, Senator Jerry Hill out of the San Mateo area, tragedy in his district with PG&E. Tragedy, more than 20 people died in San Bruno. So he helped structure the penalty for PG&E, $1.7 billion penalty. And it was structured, and he helped structure it, so much for new pipes, so much for ratepayer rebates, and so much for penalties. And when it was all done, he gave us a bill saying that none of it would be deductible. Retroactive, so it needed a 2/3 vote. It was a tax bill. And we thought, oh my goodness, what kind of message is that? That you're gonna change taxes on people retroactive? And so I'm in committee, and I said to Senator Hill, do utilities get to deduct what they pay out in dividends? And of course she said no, just like any other corporation. So if they don't get a deduction, we get to tax them at the corporate level, and then we get to tax all the shareholders when they get the dividends. Yeah. I said, well then, do you think they're going to issue a dividend if they're going to not be able to deduct $1.7 billion? I don't know. I says, well, have you modeled it out? Do we make more money by taxing twice or not issuing a dividend? No, haven't done that. I said, well, how many elderly people do you have in your district? Because a lot of elderly people like utility stocks. It just pays a good dividend. It's a good investment. Have you figured out how that's going to? No, I haven't figured that out either. And the whole room's kind of going, wow, we weren't expecting these questions. But they started figuring out, well, then maybe CalPERS doesn't get a dividend either. And how does this and that? We stopped his bill. He couldn't get the 2/3 vote. So it just, a few good things. This year, Governor vetoed 40% of the bills I asked him to veto. Little things, not everything, but we're getting little things here.
The board of directors of CalPERS and STRS is made up, is really union control.
Yeah.
If you had an outside, entity, manage PERS and STRS, it might be easier for you to make some of the reforms that you're talking about. Is that something that legislatively you could address or do, or is that just DOA?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we'll be killed. The board of CalPERS is 2/3 union.
Right.
And
Self-serving.
self-serving. So the big tragic story is twofold. One is in the late 90s when we were enjoying the dot-com boom, they said, look, we're making 20, 30% a year. Why don't we sell our stocks and buy bonds and lock in the rates? No, they didn't say that. They said, why don't we just raise our benefits? And then boom, 3 years of dismal performance after that was all done. And another story, Kathleen Connell was our state controller, and she fired the chief investment officer at CalSTRS because he wasn't selling his bonds to buy stock like what CalPERS was doing. She had him fired, and that probably cost the state $3 to $5 billion because after he was fired, they liquidated a great bond portfolio and then purchased stocks. So the craziness of having political people with self-interest, it's major conflicts running these organizations is just
Huge amounts of money.
we're talking the largest 2 pension systems in the country. There's one bigger, and that's the post office of Japan that's bigger than CalPERS. But it's just, and you're sitting, it's just mind-boggling. If you ever mention defined contribution plan, they just go ballistic. They don't realize that they're in the pension business. But they're just focused on being in the defined benefit pension plan business. That's why railroads went broke, right? They didn't realize they were in the transportation business, so airlines, killed them, right? You got to figure the whole picture out. And fortunately, at least they're starting. And what was kind of funny is they decided we better raise our investment assumption rate. but now we're going to do it over 19 years, like really incremental. So even Jerry Brown got upset about it and screamed at him 2 weeks ago, screaming at his own board, saying, you guys aren't running this as you should. So even people on the other side of the aisle are starting to figure it out and let's see what happens. But it's been a fun playground to be in. And Al, should I have one more or should I?
Maybe you'll stick around a little bit.
I can do that.
I don't want them, our promise is that we try and get you out. So thank you, John. That was a great talk. A lot of great information. Just quickly, I want to thank our sponsor for this series, Wells Fargo Bank. Thanks to the FBLA for joining us this morning. I hope we see you on a regular basis at Wake Up Newport, which our next Wake Up Newport meeting will be in January 7th. Unfortunately, I don't have the speaker yet, but we will have one, guaranteed. We have two events coming up in December. I'll just quickly mention. Next week on Tuesday, December 8th, we will be electing a new mayor here in town. And right afterwards, we have our mayor's reception at the Back Bay Bistro. It's events open to the public. There is a charge for it. But certainly, if you're interested, go to our website, newportbeach.com, and you can register for that event. And finally, our big event of the year is the boat parade. And that'll be from December 16th to the 20th out here in the harbor. Certainly, come down and view the parade. It's going to be fabulous as always. We get literally hundreds of thousands of people out for that. And if I don't see you before, have a great holiday in December, a great New Year's, and we'll see you after the first of the year. Thank you.